thank you so much for joining me today. So for everyone watching, listening, Yolanda is VP of Design at ClearScore. So why don't we start by telling us a little bit more about your journey into product design?
Oh my God, it's such a long journey, that we're going to be here for a while. So I started as a journalist, actually. I studied communication science in Valencia, I'm Spanish. So I did, my first degree was journalism, and I specialized, I did 5 years of radio. I started radio when I was 17 years old. So while I was studying, I was doing radio, and then I did, my last 2 years of university, I did radio and television at the same time. But then when I was finishing my degree, because I had done already radio and television, I specialized in infographics and editorial design instead of plain journalism. Because I had done the other stuff, so I was like, I'm not going to specialize in radio and television because I'm already working on that. So I did infographics and editorial design, and I loved it. I actually really loved it. So when I got my first job, which I had to move from Valencia to Madrid, it was in what it is one of the biggest newspapers in Spain, which is El País. So I had about 6 months of working practice, working experience, internship, whatever you want to call it. But I didn't write one article or one design, because in that time, and we're talking about many years ago, several decades ago, computers were starting in editorial teams. So I was considered the computer girl, because I was one of the few people that actually knew how to use computers. They had made a whole new editorial floor in El País and given computers to all the journalists, and no one knew how to use them. So I spent 6 months literally going from journalist to journalist, just teaching them how to open the computer and use Word and to write their articles. And I ended up so fed up that they were like, oh, we want you to stay and kind of be our ITP. And I was
You're like, I bet you do.
No, I don't want that, thank you. So I got another job in another newspaper, and that's where I started to do more editorial design and graphic design. And I had an amazing mentor who was a very good graphic designer, who had revolutionized then the design of magazines and newspapers in Spain. And he's the one who encouraged me to do my first master's, which was in graphic design, traditional graphic design. And that's how I started with design, in graphic design, mostly doing posters and book covers and stuff like that. And I worked in that magazine and newspaper for a year and a half. And then I was hired to design books. So I started designing books for an editorial company, travel books. And the first product I have ever designed was actually a travel guide. So I was given the task of designing the book, and just like the covers and the inside of the book. But as a travel guide, I have always been very annoyed at the size of them, right? You have to go around when people still carry book travel guides, yes. Right? The size of them was wrong. So what I did is I measured the pocket of my jeans, the back pocket of my jeans, because I wanted a travel guide that fit in the back pocket of your jeans, and that you could just chuck it in the back and take it wherever. So that was my first product design. It was a pocketbook guide for Prague, and it was narrow and long, and we were allowed only to make it certain thickness, because of course if you make it too big, you can't put it in the pocket of your jeans either. And it was a huge success. So then it was a whole series of pocket guides, but instead of being just small, narrow and short, they were narrow but they were long. So you could have bigger maps and so on. So that was my first product design. And I fell in love with it. And then I started to do logos and other kind of small designs. And I fell into web design kind of by mistake. Not by mistake, but you get some clients and they're like, oh, can you do this logo? And, can you do HTML? And so, yeah, sure I can, but what do you want? I said, oh, we want a website. And web design on the 90s was horrendous.
I can imagine.
It was terrible. And I just came from doing editorial design in the 90s, which was wonderful, right? It was an amazing world. graphic design and editorial design then was revolutionized completely by people like Monogram and, Paula Escher and, and it was like graphic design was top.
Yeah.
But none of it was translated to digital. Digital was awful. Bad typography, bad graphics, bad colors, bad everything. It was just absolutely no hierarchy of text, no understanding of half information, because it was all designed by engineers, right? There was no designers in the 90s on the web. Very few people. There were in Xerox Parks, right?
Yeah.
They were not in Spain doing websites. So
Yeah.
I became quite obsessed with translating that editorial design that was happening, that amazing kind of vanguard of design that was happening in print and editorial, and put it into web.
Yeah.
So that's when I decided that I wanted to do some engineering. So I did evening classes to just understand why everything looks so ugly.
Why does it need to be this way?
Why does it have to be this way? Which is like, it's a curiosity, I guess, and hunger for learning. It's a standard of my life. Right?
Yeah.
So I was like, this is so ugly, it has to be a way to make it better. So I thought I would find the answers doing night courses in an engineering degree. I did not.
I was going to say, what did you learn?
I did 2 years worth of classes and didn't learn much. A lot of C++, but not much. But I kind of understood how revolutionizing the computers and digital was going to be. It kind of cemented in my mind that print was going to die.
Yeah.
And we're talking about like mid-90s. So I already knew then that print as a medium for communication was dead, right? I worked for Microsoft for a bit, for about a year and a half, which allowed me to save some money. And this is when I started to look for degrees on human-computer interaction, or how it was called UX then, right? Ergonomics and human-computer interaction. And there were 2 places then that were doing it. Westminster University here in London and MIT. Applied for both. MIT didn't even answer to me.
So here you are.
I wanted to study with Montenegro, but it didn't happen. So I was just not disappointed, to be fair, because I really wanted to come to London. I had come to England several times before. I loved it, and I thought it was a great opportunity not only to study in a good university, but also live in London.
Yeah.
So here I came in '98 to do this degree, which it was called Human-Computer Interaction and Multimedia, and I thought it was going to be a design degree. Oh, behold, when I found out that it was in the robotics faculty. So it wasn't a design degree, it was an engineering degree. Bless me for actually have done some years of engineering before, because otherwise I don't know how I have survived with MSc. It was brutal. It was really, really brutal. I learned a lot about cognition. I did a lot of my master's compulsories were on cognition. And then I did some of the electives also on cognition, which I really, really loved. And it was the 2000s. It was 99 towards 2000. So I got hired out of university before I even finished my degree.
Oh, wow.
They were coming to university to ask for people that had degrees on, anything that had to do with the internet or with digital media. Right, this when digital media was exploding all over London. Every company in the world was coming here to get their websites done.
Yeah.
Interactive television and so on and so forth. So that's how I ended up. My dissertation was, so my premise was that yes, digital media was going to change the world. That's how everybody was going to get their news, because I came from journalism, so my dissertation was news and how people was getting to get their information and their news. But nobody had a computer. Then in the late 90s, there was, one computer every 1,000 people.
Yeah.
So there were no computers everywhere. Most people were using them in internet cafes or in the library. It was rare that a family would have a computer. So television was the solution. Everybody, 98% of the global population had television. So it was a way to actually get that information. Teletext had started. I don't know if either of you actually know what the teletext is. But it's
when you text the TV, right? Or
it's
not?
it was basically basic internet on your TV, and
Yeah.
you could actually navigate through information on the web there and whatnot. It was textual, pixel kind of text. I have to show you a picture after.
Yeah, please do.
And then is when I started to think it doesn't have to look like that. Actually, it can look like the web was starting to look like more normal, but also handle images and do other things. So I got hired by a video on demand company much earlier than Netflix. So it was called Home Choice, it was called the product, but the company was called Video Networks. And it operated in London maybe for about 5 years. And we were doing the precursor of Netflix much earlier than Netflix happened. So that's my origin story.
Nice.
There you go. Not short.
No, that was amazing. What do you think the turning point was in like the industry where it was like, right, okay, we actually have to make websites and the stuff on the TV, you know, look appealing, create a better user experience? Like, what was the point where like engineers and designers really started working together, would you say?
Actually, what it comes after, which is the dot-com boom, right? So around 2002, 2003, so during the early 2000s, so 2001 to 2003, more or less, there was an explosion. And when we're talking about an explosion, the amount of money that was running through the city to create digital media was ridiculous. We're talking about agencies will ask £1 million to do a basic website.
Oh, wow.
Like, for real.
Yeah.
And they were paid. So it was not that, that it was just not happening. But what's happening is, one, people didn't have computers. There were not so many computers. And two, the products were not that appealing. So even when people have computers, the websites were not great. No. So the whole market went down. This is when lastminute.com.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
That lastminute.com went and then down because the premise was great.
Yeah.
The same with video networks, right? All of the premises were great, but the market was not there.
It wasn't ready.
It wasn't ready, it wasn't happening. Mobile stuff was starting to happen. There was starting to be more kind of information being handled through mobile phones.
Yes.
And suddenly the money started to divert from interactive television to the websites into mobile technologies, right? Suddenly it was the new thing.
Yeah.
And the whole digital economy collapsed. So almost everyone in the city lost their jobs. And from 2004 to 2008 was a rebuilding time for finding really what made people tick, what it was really important to users, what, it was a time for design thinking and service design, and start really looking into not just the UI of things, but the UX and the Y of doing things and user testing. So I did a lot of user testing in that time, and I did a lot of money doing user testing because it was the thing. You had to user test everything because it had been such a crisis.
Sure.
That
you couldn't make the risks.
That nobody wanted to take the risk.
Yeah.
You just had to say one time, do you remember what happened? And we were like, oh yeah, test it. So we will have by then I had my own agency, which I had for about 7 years, and about 90% of my work was testing products, user testing stuff, and we had the double mirror, and proper testing rooms, and we were renting them to anyone from BlackBerry to Nokia to a lot of gambling sites, and I did lots and lots of work on that, which was really educational, actually.
No,
I
definitely.
miss my graphic.
Well, I was actually going to say, do you feel obviously that, well, it's not off topic, I think it's on topic, but with people that are now entering their careers into like product design, do you feel like there's less variety in terms of people coming from all kinds of backgrounds and more of a trend towards people actually doing product design degrees, or do you still feel like there's a way for people to break into the industry in like different areas like graphic design or whatever it might have been back in the day for you?
I think right now people is less used to, or it's coming back, so there has been a period where designers were not so used to hustle.
Yeah.
Right. my whole career is hustling. Like, what is the trend now? Websites. What is the trend now? User research. That's what we're doing.
Yeah.
I have done productions after doing a lot of research, user research. I did an interactive documentary series because that's the opportunity.
Yeah.
And so on and so forth. And I never shy away from
different things.
Yeah. Or was afraid of. Well, I'm not quite sure how to do that. My mentality was always like, I'll figure it out.
Yeah.
I'll figure it out. And all of our generation was very much like that.
Yeah.
We'll figure it out. And I found that the last few years, now since the pandemic, we've got back into that hustling spirit.
Yeah.
People is a lot more into kind of side quests and learning things, new skills, because the market is tough. And because the market is tough, people has gone back into that kind of, okay, what do you want to do? I can do anything.
Yeah.
And if I cannot, I will learn it. And,
Yeah.
and I will figure it out.
Yeah.
But there was a time where there wasn't. So all of my recruits for about a decade came from either UCL or Goldsmith or Westminster University with university degrees and master's degrees.
Sure.
On human computer interaction, on UX, on product design. And the last few years, I would say 5-6 years, have been a lot of boot camps and
Yes.
like 8-week courses into UX or online courses, self-taught stuff. And the difference is huge. The difference of a long-term education in design and product design to just getting a boot camp on Figma is a huge difference. I have noticed how, yes, they can do what you ask them to do, but you get a lot less thinking and a lot less hustling and a lot less of looking broadly at the problem.
Yeah.
It's a lot of like focus on, what do you want? You want a few wireframes for this particular interaction.
Yeah.
And they don't go, but where is the problem coming from, right? Which longer term education in design gives you that questioning kind of spirit of wondering, but maybe the user says that he wants that, or maybe the market is asking for this, but what is the underlying problem?
Yeah.
How can we actually fix this upstream?
Yeah.
So we don't have to arrive to this point where, I don't know, the user is already lost, or is already abandoning the basket, is already doing whatever it is. I find that is what has been happening until very recently.
Yeah.
Slightly started to change now. But I see very, very few people coming to me through the recruiting process that have degrees and master's degrees in design.
Really?
Design.
Yeah. That is a shame. Why do you feel like it's dropped off?
Fair enough, I think it's part of university's problem. I think they didn't catch up to the changing world, and they still have old curriculums and old ways of teaching design, and it needs to change.
Yeah.
I think the education of design needs to have, yes, that kind of solid foundation, things that I learned, like cognition.
Yeah.
I know how eyeballs work, and I know how the brain works, and how haptics work, and I know how haptics work because I have studied the connection between hands, eyes, and brain. So when I have to solve a problem with a haptic, I know exactly how.
Yeah.
If you go to someone that has done 8 weeks of Figma in a bootcamp,
they're not going to be able to.
That's right.
Yeah. The reality is there's only so much you can learn in
But
that
that's
time.
why things like evolution of haptics has stopped.
Yeah.
Because very few people actually consider haptics as something they need to include in their design. Or sound.
Yeah.
Right? Because they just learn how to do a very narrow part of the design process or the design tool system.
And I feel like we've answered a bit of this and touched on it in the previous question around your career. But why did you decide to transition from like production media into very much product-led organisations?
I didn't decide. I think it was decided for me, I guess. It's a lot of things in my career were just things that happened in front of me, right? Or there were opportunities that came along. So after having the agency for about 7 years, which was in Greece, I moved to Greece in 2003 after the dot-com boom because I wanted to have more kids. I have 3. So I had already one, and I wanted to have my kids, and having them in the UK going through a crisis was not a good idea. So we moved to Greece, where my ex-husband is from, and then I started the agency, had the agency for about 7 years. It was going great, and then the big crisis came, and Greece went down. So again, it was not a decision I made. The decision was made to me, or made for me by the macroeconomic situation of the country. So we decided to come back to the UK, and of all the different jobs that were put in front of me, or that I could choose from, thankfully I could still choose jobs. Okay, most of it was agency work.
Okay,
because I came from owning an agency for many, many years. I had a lot of interviews with the Ogilvies of this world, and all the other agencies. I didn't want to do agency work. One thing I had missed during the time I owned my own agency was actually doing the work instead of managing staff. And I wanted to work I wanted to go back a little bit to the type of product work that I was doing with media networks.
Sure.
Of thinking everything from how the product look on the screen to how the remote control. So we designed a remote control for children, because doing testing, we realized that the remote control that we had for adults, which was a really sleek, really beautiful remote control, parents didn't want to give to the children the grabby peanut butter and jam things. And it was too many buttons for children to be able to actually navigate the interface.
Sure.
So we designed a tiny one with just 5 buttons, and it was fantastic. One design. Not only video, but music, copy, whatever, putting it together, creating YouTube videos, and making a ton of money without that money going to the original owners. Because there was no technical way of doing that. So that's what Reister was designed to do. And building that product was actually wonderful. And it was 3 years of going from zero. I think I was employee 22 or something. Proper startup. Before even startup sort of thing. It was a startup. There were of course startups, but it was not the explosion that is now.
Sure.
Of building everything from scratch. I absolutely loved it. And since then, it's just been product design one after the other, because I love it. I still do. Building things, put it in front of users, solving problems.
Yeah. Great. Scary now to think that kids can really operate TV remotes like normal ones very well, probably better than us.
Kids have seen cats and birds actually navigate interfaces to find the content they want.
It's mental.
So absolutely, that's how fast we have advanced with product design, that now a cat can choose the app with their fishes by themselves. They know which icon it is their game.
That's terrifying. Where do you think the future of it is going to go?
I don't know. I'm very excited about humane and their pin. I think people started to get tired of their phones. I think that kind of slavery, servitude that we have with our phones.
People like putting it away.
Incapable of doing anything without it. We cannot navigate. We cannot remember anything. We have to stop trying to think many things, because now you can go to ChatGPT and ask for anything you want, right? It's probably my most used app at the moment. I don't Google anything anymore. I just ask ChatGPT to tell me the answer. A couple of days ago, I connected Siri to ChatGPT, so now Siri is not done anymore.
I didn't know that was a thing.
Oh yeah, please search it.
Yeah.
It's not easy, but you can do it through shortcuts.
I'm sure it will get easier as well, the more people do it.
It will get easier, that's for sure, yes. But what I mean is that it ends up being, it does servitude that we have, I think people are starting to get tired, and I think we're going to move to more and more simplified type of devices that allow us not to have to carry our phones everywhere, and not to be kind of subservient to them all the time, right? Now I go walking, I love walking, and I do weekends where I do, I don't know, 20 miles walks, and I purposefully buy maps, and I put my phone in my backpack, and I forget about it, and I just take my yellow map, and I just try to navigate with it, because I'm tired of, even when I'm in the forest or the mountains or whatever, I still be looking at my screen just not to get lost. And we're losing navigational skills.
No, it's true. You become so over-reliant on your phone. I feel like that's like a very like old generation thing of still trying to remember things, with maps, how to, take this left and then go right and then carry on going for like 100 meters and you'll get there. People don't do that anymore.
And I find it myself when anybody says to me, it's very easy, just take a right and a left, and then, 5 seconds later I've forgotten the instructions. When before, you couldn't forget the instructions because you couldn't get anywhere. No. So you have to actually memorize what you've been just told to be able to go anywhere. Or I used to write it in little pieces of paper and put it on the dashboard of my car. When I was have to go somewhere, take this route and then that route and then this thing and then turn there and put it on the dashboard. Because that was the only way to do it. And we're losing a lot of cognition and skills because of the phones. And as I said, I think we're going to move to more people using things like a UAE PIN or other devices, just not to have to depend on the phone. Now they are, I see it with teenagers. They literally leave their phones in a different room and close the door so they can concentrate to read books or do whatever.
Very successful woman in design leadership. What advice do you have for other women that are pursuing that leadership path in design?
Go for it. I mean, I think a lot of times, or I have seen many times, disqualifying themselves or not putting themselves forward because I'm just not ready yet. Maybe it's not an opportunity for me. Actually, this morning I had that conversation with a very, 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 very professional leader that perfectly could go for a much more senior leader position. And she was literally disqualifying herself out of it. Because also, we have family commitments. Still the world is not designed, the society is not designed for women with young children, which is what happens usually at that age when you are prepared for leadership, right? You are in your whatever, time of your life is, you either have a couple of young kids, toddlers, or you're actually starting to have children and you decide to have them later. And that it starts to make you think, if I have the position of more responsibility, I'm going to let my family down. And a lot of women, again, disqualify themselves to put their families first. So I think it's difficult to fight against these things because it's still not easy when nursery places are scarce, when nursery hours are still ridiculously finishing at 3 or at 5 if you're lucky, when nurseries cost £2,500 a month for a few hours a day. Women have to choose if they are going to take care of their family and their children or are going to be leaders. Or they have to kind of step back a little bit and take part-time jobs. It's very difficult to get promoted into leadership when you have a part-time schedule or a 4-day-a-week schedule, which I think is unfair. I think there is still a lot of work we need to do as women and as leaders, not only as women, men as well, of course, into understanding that leadership and family or leadership and other obligations, because it might not be family, it might be just their care of an elderly person or whatever, are not two different things. Or working part-time and being a leader is not detrimental. I think you can get great leaders that just do 3 days a week because they have all the things that they want to do the rest of the week.
Yeah.
And we're disqualifying people just because they're still constructs that very much
Society has given us that we have to follow.
Yeah.
And that leads really nice onto my next question. Obviously, you've worked with my co-founder, Ollie, before, and he always said to me that you're like this kick-ass mum, you're amazing at your job. How do you balance it all? Because there's a lot of women, like you say, out there that really struggle, feel like they're torn between choosing between one or the other, or they just really struggle to get that balance and still be able to put that career first whilst kind of balancing with their children and families too.
It's hard. I mean, you need help. I always say it in every forum. I'm never ashamed of saying I have help when my children were young, and I had my agency. I had a full-time nanny living in my house, taking care of the kids while I was working, picking them up. I would drop them in nursery or school, and she would pick them up, feed them, whatnot. I would come home. They would be bathed and dinnered, and I would just sit with them, play, and do the nicest stuff. And put them to bed. And if I didn't have that, I wouldn't have been able to do what I did. I also was capable of doing that because I was not in the UK. Because having a full-time living nanny in the UK is something very few people can afford.
Yeah.
But when we returned and the girls were 9, 6, and 3, then it was a juggle in between nurseries and au pairs, babysitters. It was crazy. It was a few years until now that they are teenagers and I don't have to be so active in the they can cook for themselves and everything. So I don't have to worry so much if I have let them lunch or not.
Yeah.
But it was a crazy period where myself was gone.
Yeah.
There was no time for me whatsoever, zero, because it was all work and family. That was it. There was no time for gym, going out with my friends and and let go, going to events or networking. Impossible. Doing these kind of things, no way, because I was always struggling to find all the hours to do my job or find all the hours to be a mom and my family. So all of that was hard. So yes, I kind of managed to work through it, but I did find that I didn't advance maybe as far or as fast because I was not being able to network like the boys can.
No, of course. I think as well, which I think this is an awful thing, the fact that people would turn around and be very self-critical of people having nannies for their children and working and balancing it as well. I still feel like there's a lot of misconception and there's a lot of judgment for females in like 100%. That's you not being a good mother when in fact you are showing those daughters what it is to be an absolute powerhouse. But I still feel like there's that real like judgment for females. You have to pick one or the other.
Yeah. There is a lot of judgment from other moms.
Yes, and that's true actually.
Society in general, and I lived through all of that, of being judged, because it was my nanny who would pick up the girls from school and who will attend some of their sports days and events. And the guilt never leaves you.
Yeah.
Like it has only been now that the girls are adults, and or a few years ago, it was not now, but it was a few years ago, when I sat them down, I went, sometimes I feel really bad that I did this to you, right? That I actually was not attending your school events. I was going to parent teacher, but I might not go to like sports day. And I have 3, so I could go maybe to one of them, but not all of them. So I would have to kind of find a way to balance that situation because I was doing my job. And the response has always been, yes, maybe when we were little, we were like, oh, it would be nice to have mom here. But you were the mom that would drop us at school dressed like amazing. All the other moms would be like in their joggers. You were always super nice dressed with your handbag and ready to go to work. And you will come back from something important, running through the school, like all this glamour. So no, and we love that. I remember my daughter saying, I just came back from my IT class, and the teacher said to Google something, and I Googled you, and you were the only parent that actually appears in Google.
That's
And
special.
she was like, my mom is famous. And she was so proud of the fact that, you can Google my name and I appear there with, conferences and podcasts and interviews and whatnot. And that is invaluable.
Yeah.
I cannot tell you
Definitely.
how, apart of the work ethics and the kick-assness, right? You cannot educate that without showing it.
No.
And that's future education. Now I have 3 incredibly hardworking teenagers that are obsessing about their careers constantly. My 14-year-old who's just starting her first year of GCSEs, she's like, oh, I wanted to do this, but that thing, but what do you think about, I have heard that biotech is going to be super hot.
Oh, wow.
I think I want to do biotech. And I was like, yeah, but you need all of this science stuff, and, your math is so and so. Okay, I'm gonna really push hard on the math because, I'm gonna need it. So we went to parent teacher, and instead of being a passive receiver, she was there talking to her teacher saying, no, you have to get me to this level because this is what I want to do.
Yeah.
Because these are the careers of the future.
That's amazing.
This is what I want to do. And I'm like, I was not like that. I was like, oh my God, where are these kids going to go? They were like, at 14.
Yeah.
I didn't know.
That's a special child there.
No,
I
they
think.
are, oh my God.
Yeah, I think.
Three of them are like that.
Yeah.
So my second one is doing film school and the same thing. She didn't want to do A-levels because she was very clear that she wanted to be a film director, and in the film industry the best you can do is just work and do many things and rather be watching movies and attending like events or going as a runner into shots or whatever than being hours and hours studying theory at home. And she made that decision really early on, and she's committed to it, and she's going through it. And my eldest wanted to do psychology, and she, from very early, she was like, "This is what I want to do, even if I'm not going to make like huge amount of money." And I was like, "You're kidding me? We're all nuts. You're going to make a lot of money." That's the one profession I don't see anywhere in the future disappearing.
Definitely, it's not.
We all need therapists. We all need therapists.
Even more so now. But yeah, I think the great thing is because obviously the percentage of women in leadership is still not there, but because there is more and there's more examples that you can look up to, I think you've just got something to relate to now, and it's slowly starting to become accepted, and it's something that everyone is really acknowledging that there's a problem there. So I think it's so important to be able to set an example to others out there.
But they're starting to see the representation.
Yeah.
The representation is working.
Yeah.
Whatever people say or whatever men complain about, the fact that that representation exists, that there is a whole bunch of kick-ass women in every sphere. I mean, most of the AI top scientists are women. Most of biotech scientists are women. Yeah. Huge companies are now choosing CEOs. I know there is a whole conversation about why they choose female CEOs and so on and so forth. The truth is that they are there.
Yeah.
And they are doing incredible work.
And yeah, also, like you say, they would not be put in that position if they were not fully capable of excelling in that role.
Absolutely. And there is that power force in between, women pushing more women through. The 90s and the 2000s were horrible because there were so few opportunities for women. The women used to put down women all the time. It was a competition market, and you couldn't, and there was like that fear that if you were helping your sisters along, you were going to see as like a danger. Yeah. That has disappeared, thank God, from more than, I would say, a decade now, that is a completely different position. And we help each other. We have networks of women. Yeah. We have events for women. We have now a club. I'm a founding member of Chief, which is a members club mostly for women that are either VP or Chief level. Amazing. And the conversations we have all the time are about how are we going to help the next level of leaders? How are we going to make sure that the fight that we have to put to get where we are is not the fight that they're going to have to put to get where they are? How are we going to make sure that women can network even when they have families?
Yeah.
You know, make sure that the club has a creche, that you can bring your children, that they're accepted, that they are, you know, revered even. In a way that, you know, you don't need to feel guilty because you're carrying your kids to a network event. Why networking events have to be all around drinking and late at night?
That's
So
true.
just have change things and make them early when either kids are at nursery and you can bring them.
No,
right?
It's really true. I feel like there's much more, there's a community now, and regardless of whether you work for the same companies, even if, you know, they're technically a competitor of yours, you're always trying to like build each other up and then also bring these other females through. And I think it's got to a point now where it's actually like, it's very special when you celebrate each other and you see people like achieving amazing things. Like there's nothing better.
Yeah.
So I feel like this is a question that a lot of females want to hear. A lot of females watching will be able to relate to it. But what hardships have you faced as a female pursuing like a design leadership focused career?
I also say this often. I don't think I have had as many as maybe people expect me to have had.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's my own nature that I don't let it be, or I've been lucky. Because from the first mentor I had when I was telling you in the newspaper, when my mentor was or my boss, but also my mentor was an amazing graphic designer, and he encouraged me to study and so on. I have had always, or most times, really good male mentors that have encouraged me and pushed me for the next level, whatever that next level was, or whatever education it was, or whatever empowerment it was. So I can't complain in that angle. In the fact that, you know, when I was growing, I had a lot of really good male mentors. More male than female in my case. Not that I haven't had any female mentors, but most of I would say 90% of my career, I have had male mentors.
Yeah, I think that's the reality of it as well. When you're in a male-dominated industry, it's the same in recruitment. My mentors, leadership, they're male. And there's nothing wrong with that as long as they empower you.
As I said, I don't know if it's luck or the way that I am, that it has been great for my growth. The first time I was made head of design, it was by Marco Giusti, who was the director, the VP of video networks, and I was incredibly young, and I thought I was completely unqualified. And he sat me down and said, "Why are you unqualifying yourself for this job? You're trying to talk me out of the job. Why? You're perfectly capable of doing this. And I will accept if you don't want to do it, but I think you should try and see. I can see it in you. Why you're not seeing it?" So it was the first time that I was talked like that. But since then, I've had many opportunities where that has happened. So I don't think we can always demonize senior male leadership for the advancement of, for not the advancement of women, or the negative advancement of women. In my case, it's not true. I have heard many stories from my leadership sisters where that hasn't been the case. I would say that, again, the opportunity comes and you have to take it. There have been jobs when I was working for Hearst magazines and I had to travel constantly to the US, to New York, where it was incredibly hard because I had to leave my kids for a full week. And I could have said, absolutely not, I'm not doing this, because they were still little. But I said yes, and then I had to live with the consequences of accepting that role and accepting that leadership, global leadership position, who had me working for 13, 14-hour days and traveling a lot, because it was not only the US, but Italy and Netherlands and Spain. So it was a lot of it, and it was exhausting. And it did at the end end up with me not accepting a further position at Hearst when it was offered, because I just couldn't see how I could.
Yeah, you didn't want to sacrifice anymore.
It was not possible to carry on doing it for a length of time, which which means that somebody else got that position that had less responsibilities than I did. Do I regret it? No, I don't.
No.
I just went into another job, better paid, good position. I didn't have so much trouble.
Yeah.
And that was that. So.
No. Do you think there's like any questions or due diligence that females can be doing when it comes to like accepting new roles and maybe avoiding putting themselves in negative environments without working there yet?
Yeah. I mean, you have to be savvy of the world, right?
Yeah.
And you have to negotiate hard. That's another thing. A part of the guilt and the imposter syndrome.
Yes.
You have the art of negotiation. And we haven't been taught as much as maybe men, boys have. It's part of their way of living, right? They negotiate from, I don't know, Pokemon cards when they're 7, 8, 9 to, I don't know, football strategies or whatever. In the girls' world and the women's world, the art of negotiation is something that you learn when it's far too late. And women do not negotiate as hard as men do, at least.
No, it's true. It's true.
I see it in interviews and I see it when we do offers to candidates, how hard men, in general, okay, now I'm generalizing, it's not 100%. There are a few women out there that negotiate really hard. But in general, women do not negotiate or make difficult questions as much as men do.
Yeah.
And that's something that has to stop, absolutely. You need to start asking the questions. And you need to completely put your cards on the table and say, this is what I want. And start always with what you want and what you need. I want 4 days a week because I have a family, and I want this salary because this is the market. Do your research, and this is the level I want, and the position I want, and the things that I want to work on.
Yeah.
And negotiate. Everything is not for negotiation.
Definitely. I see it so much as well. We were obviously going to go on to imposter syndrome, but especially in recruitment, I speak to so many female designers, and I'm just shocked at the salaries that they're being paid or what they're targeting. And I just think, no, like, you deserve more than that. We're 100% going to find you something at more. And you have to coach people to, realise their worth and know that the data are out there. And, a lot of women say, I just feel so uncomfortable even having to ask those questions. So, yeah, what advice do you give people to kind of get over that imposter syndrome and really put themselves out there?
Watch podcasts of kick-ass women.
Yeah.
Find articles on the art of negotiation. Read books on negotiation techniques and educate yourself. And talk in the mirror before you go to an interview. Write down what you want, and then say it over and over and over. Practice with whoever you can near your hand. You guys are fantastic for that. But do the work, put the work. You're worth a lot more than you think you are. In women, that is almost always the truth. So many times I come and I see what they accept. And then, when you are in kind of interviewing time, it's difficult to know the person in depth.
Yeah.
You kind of know the surface of it. So if they say that they are okay with that salary, you go like, okay, fine. And then you get to know them and they're like, oh my God.
Yeah.
Why? I mean, I am one of those leaders that I spend a lot of time negotiating salaries for people and promotions and market leveling and so
yeah.
on.
I think it's so important, especially when you look at the gender pay gap and all the work that's being done to reduce it. I think there's just so much more that we can be doing as females, like making each other aware that it's not okay to just accept or feel like you're in that position. But I feel like it's not just to do with your salaries and your packages. I feel like it can leak into like everyday work as well when it comes to leading on projects or running certain sessions. It kind of like impacts people from all different angles.
Yeah, it happens everywhere. The fact that they don't ask what they want, it's almost like it's a bad thing to say what you want.
Yeah.
It's not. No. Watch more Cardi B.
Yeah.
That's it. unleash your badass.
Yeah.
And just go for it. There's nothing wrong with it.
No.
The time of women being accused of being too much or wanting too much or
yes.
or pushing or it's gone.
Yeah. Just
really.
Have to go for it.
You have to go for it, and if that company doesn't accept it, then it will be another one that does. Or start your negotiation softly and then carry on. Once you start demonstrating your worth, remember that once you negotiated your salary or your position, it doesn't mean that that's where you have to stay forever.
So a bit of a controversial one, but I often speak with females that say how hard it can be working in male-dominated environments. So whether that's collaborating with engineering teams that are heavily male-dominated, and sometimes almost feeling a bit overpowered or feeling like they're not taken seriously. Have you ever experienced that? And do you have any advice, pointers for people that are in those situations?
You always get it. It's just not working in male-dominated environments or, the myth that engineering is difficult, or you just have to see people as people.
Yeah.
And there is certain barriers that certain people, that they just don't understand, right? You especially if you come from design, there's suddenly a lot of things that people might think that a designer do that behaves or how they do things. And you just have to show your work. And you just have to go every day and with kindness and positivity and whatnot, just kind of start dropping all of those barriers. The barriers, you're going to find them with male and female everywhere you go. If you get misunderstood, you get misunderstood equally by anyone. So it's not so much a gender thing than whenever you arrive to a place, you have to again start anew, demonstrating what you can do. There might be that if it's a very kind of broski environment, which you get them sometimes, it's extra hard because you're seeing through a lens. But once your work, you start doing your job. Your work start talking more than, I was going to say a certain word, but more than your skirt. Is definitely a case of just don't let it get into you. Don't let it think, oh my God, I'm just walking into this kind of old boys place and he's going to put me down and they're going to think about me. No, just think I'm walking into a room full of humans.
Yeah.
And I have to demonstrate my worth like I do everywhere else I go. There's no difference. You have to demonstrate your worth everywhere you go.
Yeah, definitely.
So just do that.
Yeah, and then people respect you through the work you're doing.
Correct. Do your job, and then you will get the respect, I can assure you. It has never stopped me, ever. I love working with men. It's no different to working with women.
Yeah.
Love it. But you have to demonstrate that you are, like in every level, right? Sometimes we discuss as well female leadership at the table, or even design leadership, not just female, but design.
That's
right?
a big thing.
How does design sit at the table? Well, look around the table, understand what they talk about and how they talk about it, which is most of the times business.
Yeah.
And learn some of that. Because you're not going to come talking about gradients and color palettes and patterns to a bunch of people that are sitting in front of a spreadsheets talking about P&L.
No.
And think that you're speaking the same language. They look at you and go, you're cute.
Yeah.
No. But, you want to sit at the table, demonstrate your worth, demonstrate your value, learn the same language, get a few business skills, or in the case of walking into a room full of engineers, some engineering skills.
Yeah.
If you speak the language they speak, if they don't have to explain everything to you because you have done some of the learning and some of the work, then at least half of the road you've already walked.
And that's the turning point for your team as well. Once you can speak that language, it just elevates your whole team. Absolutely. And the potential that they have as well. We spoke a little bit earlier about some support networks, obviously the rise of the female communities. Are there any in particular, outside of the ones that we've already spoken about, that you would recommend to people that could be leadership focused or just female design in general?
I mean, there is now that soon there is the Silicon Runabout happening. Actually, next Friday, I think, we have a product, Women's in Product event at ClearScore. There are so many. If you just go to Eventbrite or Meetup, you find tons and tons and tons of events for women. I think that now they are not so difficult to find networking events specifically. I would like to see, as I said earlier, more events focused on parents.
Yes.
That are not this late in the evening or after work. Because now there's flexi work almost in every company. So you could go to an event in the morning or at lunchtime and then carry on with your working day. I think things need to be a bit more thought for parents, for example, or people that just cannot do after 6 because they need to be home for the kids.
Yeah, no, that's a really good point, because when you look at the majority of meetups, they are after hours.
That's right.
And what about communities as well? So outside of going to meetups and meeting people, are there any like communities of note where you've got the same group of women, who you're getting to know, you've got people that you can confide in regularly as well?
Not that I know particularly. I mean, you guys run a tight community, it's a good one, where you can talk with anyone. I am more into making sure that there is generic communities more than just male or female.
Sure.
More specific to the like functions. I am missing a stronger, more focusing design, like the craft of design communities. I think it's been a big lost in between. Like now it's all about product and product engineering and product design, but more kind of just design, just the craft of design has been a bit lost. Or maybe I need to do more research, because maybe there are some communities out there I just don't know.
We might have to stop.
Yes, but communities, you make them. So I have a couple of groups that we of ex-colleagues that we keep on seeing each other and follow careers, and I follow the people I like and I have worked with, or I would like to work with, like athletes from my fantasy football team. Right, whenever I have worked with someone or I have seen someone that I really enjoy, I keep them close and I try to kind of create a community around, because you never know when you're going to need to hire them.
And looking back, what advice would you give to your younger self?
I don't know. I wouldn't change much of it. Just relax and enjoy the ride. Sometimes I've been too stressed about things. I've always been very, very ambitious, so I always wanted to kind of progress maybe faster than I should have, which has created some stressful situations where I was totally fake it until you make it. And that period where you're faking it is excruciatingly painful, because you're there second guessing every decision that you make. It has taken me where I am, so I don't really regret it, I guess, but it was harder than maybe it would have been if I kind of educated myself and then went into the position instead of going to the position and then educating myself. But it's worked out, so I don't know if I would change anything. I'm okay with my path.
I love that. And then final thought, what are your thoughts on like the future of design leadership in the UK right now?
Oh, that's the $1 million question before the end. I think it's going to go back again into what we were talking at the very beginning of the depth of education that you get, right? Because we are entering in a world where the AIs are going to be the clever person in the room. They are going to have more cognitive power than we have, and they are going to be able to think faster and better than we do. So if you don't have that broad knowledge and that broad experience that allows you to connect the dots, not as fast, but maybe as better and more humane than they do, it's going to be hard. So start reading. Start educating yourself, start broadening your topics, and understand a lot more how humans work, how really human works, because that's the one thing or machines are not going to know how to do, right? We are complex machines.
Yeah.
We are very, very complex. It's not only our wants and needs, it's our emotions, it's the time of the month that we are, is, phases of the moon. There's so many things that changes. We are not the same person. We're not the same human, even in the same day.
No.
And there are so many things that change the way that we think and that change the way that we behave. We have been designing a lot of generalism in the last few years. We're entering into a world of personalization. But that personalization, if it's fictitious or is machine learned or is machine generated, is not going to go as deep as its humans start to tweak it and really understand what makes humans be humans.
Yeah.
And I think, again, we're going to start going to a much more humane way of designing things, where we start thinking really of what makes humans be humans and start designing for them. Again, big fan of humane because of that, because they saw the problem, which is we have introduced a hardware into the human world where now it's taking over your life. Let's strip it back to take it to a place where you still can do a lot of the things that you want to do, but it's not there. Your hands are free. Both hands. Not just
that would be nice.
Because in the other one, wherever you look, the person next to you is holding a phone. Like 90% of the time. It would be wonderful to be again as expressive as a Spanish woman and use both hands to talk or to do anything that you want to do, because the machine is not there anymore.
Yeah, definitely. Well, thank you so much for joining me.
You're welcome.
Thank you.